Hello, the meeting is now live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members, officers, visitors and members of the public. I am Councillor Mike Baldock. I'm getting feedback. Good evening, members. Have we got it sorted yet? Good evening, members, officers, visitors and members of the public. I'm Councillor Mike Baldock and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. The meeting will be recorded and proceedings will be conducted in accordance with the Council's constitution, including procedural rules which are available on the Council's... Why isn't this... Can I turn my volume up? Okay, item 1. There is no planned evacuation drill this evening, and accordingly, if the alarm sounds, it is to be treated as a genuine need to evacuate. There are emergency exits over there and opposite the lifts where you came in. On exiting, you will be directed to the assembly point, and it is important that you remain there and do not return to the building until I have announced that it is safe to do so. If anyone present will need assistance in evacuating, could you please inform me now so that we can make the necessary arrangements to assist you? Councillor Marchington and Sir. What do we do now? Okay, we've got that. Thank
Mr. Chairman,
you.
sorry, I think there's a member of the public as well.
Another member of the public. So there's 3 people. A lady in the corner. Gentleman, right, yes, hello. Right. Members must consider each application. And everything that is said in the meeting concerning the application and make their decision based solely on the planning judgment of the information available to them. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice. Planning permission is not granted or refused until the issue of that decision notice. Any member of the council who is not a member of a planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak having given prior notification. Such visiting members may of course include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training before doing so. Members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each item is being debated and should not vote on the item unless they have done so. I would now like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. An audible warning of time will be given when there are 30 seconds remaining. If a meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, you may speak both at this meeting and at the site meeting. And I believe we're changing this so that you're able to speak on the matter when it comes back to the planning committee. The meeting will not, okay. I will take any items that a member of the public has registered to speak first before moving to the remainder of the agenda. Item 2, apologies for absence and substitutes.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Andy Booth, and his substitute is Councillor Lloyd Bowen. Claire Martin, Councillor Kieran Golding, his substitute is Councillor Angela Harrison. Councillor Elliot Jays, his substitute is Councillor Derek Carnell, and Councillor Simon Clark. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 3, minutes. To approve the minutes of the meetings held on the 23rd of May 2024 and the 15th of May as correct records. No, wait, hang on. Which one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification, please, on point 47, the Frognal land between Frognal and Ardview. The minutes say the ward members spoke against the application and raised points, which include Councillor Speed and I were not speaking as ward members that evening. We were speaking as committee members, as we were, or as we will be also doing this evening. I think that distinction should be made, please. Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite correct. Yep.
With that, happy.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, for the minutes from the 15th of May, I would just like it added in that I was actually present.
Oh yes.
Wearing that big horrible robe.
Right, are we all, with those 2 amendments agreed, are we all happy with the minutes of the 15th of May and the 23rd of May? Agreed. Thank you, that's lovely. Okay, item 4. To invite members' declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests under the Localism Act 2011, disclosable non-pecuniary interests under the Code of Conduct adopted by the Council, I would like to remind the meeting that where it is possible that a fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there was a real possibility that a member might be predetermined or biased on any agenda item, the member should declare this possibility and then leave the room whilst that item is considered. Any? Okay, there are no hands. Part B, reports for the Planning Committee to decide. The first item is the deferred item, land between Frognal Lane and Orchard View. Can the Planning Officer provide a summary and update on the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. As you mentioned, this item relates to a site at Tenham between Lower Road and London Road. Just by way of a verbal update, since the report was published, one additional objection has been received, raising concerns in relation to the sewer system, traffic, GP provision and the loss of agricultural lands. These are matters that have been taken into account and covered in the original committee report.
Can I ask Parish Councillor Paul Townsend, please, to speak?
Okay. Good evening. I'm Councillor Paul Townsend, Chairman of Tenham Parish Council. The Parish Council have voiced many concerns, community concerns so far. Tonight I want to draw your attention to two specific items. They are the lack of doctor's surgery and a car-centric design for the housing zone area. Firstly, GP facilities. The absence of a GP facility in the village is significant. Currently, there are 6,000 people in the local area, plus approximately 1,000 people of new residents coming into this development. We're looking at 7,000 people with no GP facility. Second concern is design. The current car-centric design raises several issues. CPRE have noted that planning often results in mediocre car-centric layouts. Such designs undermine community cohesion and harm our environment. Consider the current design. How many roads would a child have to cross to reach the primary school or the play area? Where will residents come together and interact? How many roads would a mobility scooter user have to cross to get to the shops? CPRE advocate for designs that prioritise walking and cycling, incorporating green spaces and community amenities that encourage social integration and physical activity. The UK government supports this vision, promoting the 20-minute neighbourhoods, with essential services are accessible within a short walk or a bike ride. This approach reduces reliance on cars. These designs are not just aesthetic, they foster health, well-being and social equality. Additionally, the UK National Design Guides highlight the need for a connected network of routes prioritising pedestrians and cyclists. It calls for safe, direct, convenient and accessible paths for people of all abilities. People-centric designs would also support Swale Borough Council's Climate and Ecology Emergency Action Plan and align with the goal of achieving a net zero emission across the borough by 2030. In summary, our concerns are lack of GP and a car-centric design for the housing zone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now can I ask Julian Moat to come down and speak?
Good evening, Chairman and members. thank you for the opportunity to address the committee again this evening. Whilst we remain disappointed with the delay associated with the deferral outcome in May, we have continued to work constructively with the officer team and remain fully committed to bringing forward our local plan allocation and outline consented scheme to deliver much needed new family homes within the borough. We fully endorse the officer report before you this evening that clearly sets out the reasons for deferral fall outside the lawful determination of our application before you this evening. Notwithstanding this, since May we have provided clear clarifications on each of the committee's deferral grounds, demonstrating that they sit outside of the reserved matters scope and fundamentally were matters considered as part of the outline consent. In respect of the length of the lease term for the new sports pitches, pavilion and allotments, we have made a firm commitment to ensure that the new facilities are provided to Tenham Parish Council on a 100-year leasehold or freehold basis, representing a significant betterment to the previously secured planning position. This demonstrates our firm commitment to ensuring that the new community facilities will be provided for the enjoyment of the local Tenham community in perpetuity. Our scheme delivers crucially needed new homes within the borough at a time when it has recently been evident at appeal that the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Crucially, new homes from this development form part of the council's 4.1-year housing land supply calculation, and any delays to the approval of this application risk a further reduction in housing supply across the borough. The proposals include 100 new locally affordable homes, almost doubling those consented outline provision, materially boosting the supply of new available affordable homes in a borough which has recently declared an affordable housing emergency. Our new homes will be provided for local people in local housing need through a commitment by our registered provider to grant full nomination rights to the council for the affordable rented homes. We have a ready to deliver site. Through our work to date, we have relevant key planning condition discharges in place and are well underway on site to implement the new road infrastructure approved as part of the outline consent. Our development will unlock in excess of £4.2 million in Section 106 contributions, money that is allocated to local infrastructure improvements, such as the expansion of Tenham Primary School, which is now progressing. Our proposals embed sustainability principles, maximising energy efficiency and the use of renewable technology to minimise future home energy bills, as well as delivering in excess of a 20% biodiversity net gain. In summary, we remain fully committed to developing new homes for local people, together with providing new community facilities which will truly be provided for the local community in the long term. I therefore urge members to endorse the officer recommendation, avoid an unnecessary appeal on a local plan outline consented site, and allow our construction.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll move the officer's recommendation. Oh, so I'd like someone to second it. Thanks, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Speed, you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't feel that the officer's report addresses the concerns that this committee raised at our last meeting. Taking air quality first, the applicant is simply not interested. Their air quality assessment completely ignores the impact on PM 2.5, which is the pollutant most harmful to human health. We've recently installed PM monitoring equipment in AQMA5, but we don't yet have the results. However, modelling by Imperial College London shows the average along this stretch of London Road to be around 11 micrograms per cubic metre. The Environment Act 2021 and the Environmental Targets Regulations 2023 set a legally binding target of a maximum mean concentration of 10 micrograms by 2040 and an interim target by January 2028 that must not exceed 12 micrograms. We're already at 11. An additional 298 houses means 536 extra vehicles plus commercial traffic. That suggests an injection of over 2,000 trips onto the A2. Assuming an equal east-west split, That's an increase of at least 1,000 daily vehicle movements through AQMA 5, an uplift of 15% on the traffic count conducted by the Department for Transport in 2019. There's a direct relationship between friction particles and the volume of traffic in built-up areas. So a similar uplift in particulate matter would see the levels exceed the interim target set by the government, not to mention the legally binding long-term target. So allowing this development to go ahead would both flout government policy and consign residents to experience the chronic and acute harms that PM 2.5 causes. This is legislation that has been enacted since the outline permission was granted, so is a new material consideration that must be taken into account. Further, policy DM6 of the local plan requires developers to integrate air quality management into the location and design of the development and demonstrate that proposals do not worsen air quality to an unacceptable degree, especially bearing in mind the cumulative impact of schemes likely to impact on AQMAs, and we all know about all the other house building in the Tenham area. The developer has provided no mitigation measures whatsoever, and this development would have, at the very least, a moderately adverse impact on air quality. Therefore, this application is in contravention of policy DM6. Turning to sewage, it's disappointing that no further clarification has been received from Southern Water regarding this committee's concerns. Therefore, it remains the case that raw sewage overspills from manhole covers and runs down into residents' front paths and driveways and causes the toilets to back up and spill into people's property and back gardens in Frognal Lane. The sewage plant in Tenham can't cope. Southern Water employees have said there's no room for the plant to be upgraded as it's running at full capacity. Tanker lorries are being brought in on a 2-weekly basis to take excess sewage away. Southern Water has a statutory duty to ensure that the service to existing customers does not deteriorate as a result of new homes being built. They have not provided this reassurance. They say the current foul sewerage capacity will allow 50 initial dwellings to connect without reinforcement, but there's already a major failure of mains drainage in Frognal Lane. Their only commitment is to endeavour to provide reinforcement for the balance of the development or alternative drainage arrangements. I don't think we should agree to any more houses being built until Southern Water no longer need to send tankers to take away sewage from the existing properties, let alone any new ones. We need to see detailed, budgeted and timetabled plans to solve the drainage problems, and that has not been forthcoming. Only last week there was a mysterious incident of unknown strong chemicals being found at the Tenham wastewater plant. The chemicals were taken away by a huge number of tankers, and Southern Water haven't confirmed what these chemicals were or how they got there. But this is yet further evidence of wastewater problems in Tenham. And frankly, if the sewage issues are not resolved, Frognal Lane could remain a building site for years with half-built houses because the developer won't want to complete the remaining 250 houses if there's no prospect of them being occupied, because the utility company either can't or don't have the budget to upgrade the foul water system. The infrastructure in Tenham can't cope with these extra 300 houses. And it's not just sewage. Last Sunday at about 10 to 8, there was a power cut across Tenham and Linstead because so many people tuned in to the Euro 24 final at the same time, the network couldn't cope. Services in Tenham are at breaking point. And then, Chairman, there's healthcare provision. This committee agreed at the last meeting that access to a GP is key to sustainable development. The applicant has been approached again and is not interested in building a GP surgery, despite the fact that a plot was allocated in the original application. As members will recall, Chartway purchased the land for the housing development, but Trendport retained ownership of where the surgery was supposed to go. The officer's report states that healthcare is still being delivered by the NHS, albeit from Sittingbourne, but that's only for existing residents. The surgeries in Sittingbourne are not accepting new patients, so these 700 or so new residents will have no access to a GP. Why can't Chartway build 296 houses, plus a surgery where the other two houses would have gone? Or why can't they buy that small additional plot of land off Trendport? They flatly refused to do anything. This is in contravention of policy MU4 of the local plan. Paragraph 11 requires improvements to health facilities in Tenham. Paragraph 13 requires the provision of the infrastructure needs arising from the development, in particular, health provision. If this development is allowed to proceed, I trust their marketing materials will carry a health warning. Only people with no medical issues, either now or in the future, should live in these houses. Finally, as I stated at the last meeting, this proposal is in overall contravention of policy MU4, which specifies mixed-use development including an employment area. Mixed use was intended to help our borough meet its economic and employment targets, and the policy was approved on this basis by the planning inspector. Policy MU4 is dependent on associating housing with employment. Chartway are now cherry-picking the housing development, and there's no guarantee that the employment area will emerge at all. What jobs are being created for the people who would live in these houses? And how will they travel to whatever work they can get? With public transport in Tenham so poor, they'll be jumping into their cars. That hardly ticks the sustainable transport box. In fact, this application doesn't tick any boxes, so I will be voting against the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
I hope you're going to listen to the debate and judge at the end of the debate how you're going to vote. If you could just confirm that.
I can confirm that, Chairman.
Thank you. Matt, I don't know if there's any other points you want to come back on, but could you just clarify regarding the new policy on air quality since the outline permission was given?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So since the item was deferred, we've engaged with the Air Quality Officer to ask these questions. What she advised is actually since the outline planning permission was approved in 2021, air quality is actually improved. There is monitoring of PM 2.5, not at the Tenham AQMA, but at others. And what they've found there is that the measurements of PM 2.5 aren't cause for alarm in those locations, and although we don't have a record running in Tenham, the expectation is that it won't be above the government's objectives. Planning policy hasn't altered, and from when the discussions I've had with the Air Quality Officer, who is the person I get the advice from in relation to planning applications, is she doesn't anticipate that PM 2.5 will exceed the government objectives, either interim or longer term.
So
Chair, can I come in at this point, please?
No. We can't have people interjecting from the...
It's just legal advice, Chair, before the...
no, I haven't finished. I was just talking, I was addressing the public. I'll call you in a minute. I was just asking that if we have disruption from a public gallery, we will have to close the meeting. So I have to give you that warning. Okay, who does this wants to speak?
Oh, that's legal. It's our legal chap thing.
Okay, our legal chap now wishes to speak.
Yes, my name is Surinder Adker. I'm the legal advisor to the committee. I'm a solicitor. What I have to make clear before we enter into proper debate is that this is a decision which is on reserved matters, and they are clearly defined, as you as a committee will know. It is not a decision on the outline planning permission, which has already been granted. So all of the matters mentioned hitherto on air quality, on other parts of the local development plan, various parts of the local plan are in fact matters which were material considerations for the outline planning permission and are not so for today's purposes. So I would ask the committee to discard everything in making this decision other than those matters relating to landscape, layout, access, and appearance, and nothing else. And all of the matters, though very pertinent at the outline planning permission stage, mentioned by, in particular, the ward councillor, are not so for today's proceedings. If they are entertained, then they could put the council in danger of being appealed.
That was not a material planning application, consideration, costs and expenses. And I'm not overly keen the committee has lectured on something we're already quite well aware of. So if
I'm not trying to lecture you, Chair. I'm just simply trying to clarify matters. If I come across as lecturing you, then I apologise. But this is very important, and I think it is my job to remind the committee of that in today's proceedings.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Bowen. Oh, did you want to come back, Councillor Speed?
Yes, if I may, Chairman, thank you. I have to take issue with the advice received from the air quality officer. How can she possibly say that pollution levels in Tenham has improved? There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever to demonstrate that. Yes, NOx has improved as we move towards more electric vehicles and emissions from lorries become cleaner, but there is absolutely no evidence to say that particulate matter, which is much more dangerous, in Tenham has improved, because there has been no monitoring. And to say that it's improved in Newington, so therefore it must be okay in Tenham, is utterly absurd advice. We have recently put new particulate monitoring equipment into the London Road in Tenham, but we haven't got any data yet, so we simply don't know what the position is. But we do have modelling by Imperial College, which suggests that it's in the top quartile of pollution in the entire country. And as I stated in my opening remarks, the Environment Act 2021 and the Environmental Targets Regulations 2023 is legislation that's come in since the outline permission was granted, and to proceed with that application would put us in contravention of that legislation, and therefore I do consider that to be a material consideration. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I just say, I'm a bit concerned that our assumptions are based on evidence from Newington, when in Newington, when there was application in Newington, we had to rely on evidence from St Paul's. Why is it that we always seem to look for somewhere else? How reliable is these comparisons?
Chair, because there is no history of monitoring in Tenham, there's no way to refer to what would be achieved. So the nearest site the air quality officer advises that there is PM 2.5 being tested in Newington, and looking at that information, it didn't cause alarm. And if it holds true in Tenham, then although we don't have information for Tenham, but if the assumption holds true, then PM 2.5 may well not be above the objective, but we wouldn't know that for certain until there's been a history of data collected over time in Tenham.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say at this point, I'm speaking as a committee member, although I'm also one of the ward members of this particular area, but I'm not speaking as the ward member. A few points on this, and I first of all echo all of what my colleague Councillor Speed has just said. On the air quality, how can we possibly come to a conclusion when we've just said, with respect to, and Matt has actually done a really, and I said this last time, has done a really good job in keeping us informed and the parish council, so kudos to Matt for this. But how can we possibly make a judgment when the officer has just said, well, we've got no history? So how do we know what the figures are to say that's acceptable or not? But we have to wait until such time to build up a load of data, which will then mean we have an extra 298 houses adding to the data, which we know is already flawed or is close to being out of acceptable limits. It just doesn't add up. Also on the air quality side, I know it's been said many times, but since the outline permission was granted, we've had a little thing called COVID, in which case there's a heck of a lot of traffic in that area, which went down. And I would question, or I would find it useful, what comparison and if consideration has been made on the impact on the air quality zone as a result of the Blossom Grove estates being completed, kind of, and Spring Acres, because all will have an impact on this particular area, and surely should be a consideration in terms of the effect and whether it actually can take this level of development. In terms of the actual application and in the size, layout, etc., etc. For those who aren't familiar with the area, and the officer may want to pick up on this if you can, the actual size of that plot, running from north to south or from the A2 down into that square, roughly, in my opinion, I think it's about, at most, 150 metres-ish. You're also going to be putting a sports pavilion in there, 3 football pitches and a cricket pitch. 298 houses in an area of that size, I think, is rather cramped. We haven't got, unless the officer's got it on file, the road layout. But I also think, and I'm minded in terms of, thank you, there you go, other developments over the years, and I'm going to pick on one, sorry, of Iwade, where you just go there and you find cars all over the place. They are blocking the road, makes it incredibly hard to get through, and I can see this becoming exactly the same there. It's a lot of houses in what I think is a very small area. As been mentioned, the school is being expanded on at the moment, and that will overlook on mainly towards the sports side. But there will be an element also where potentially could impact on the bottom corner of the development in terms of overlooking, which I'm not clear on whether that would be the case or not, but I think it's worth a consideration. I've also got concerns in terms of, and this goes back to the parish council, in terms of the sports facilities. The report says about that KCFA and other people want to be informed. Sports England, Kent FA would like to be consulted around the operator of the site, and there are clubs who would be interested in potential. I get that. But the parish council have been offered potentially either a long lease or actually ownership if they choose to have it. So it should be for them to be included in the consultation, and if they are going to run the site, surely it's for them to decide how it should be operated, not for other bodies to necessarily get involved and have a say on that. They could be consulted and give their opinion, but the way the report comes across as if they're will have an impact on the decision making, which I think is wrong. Councillor Speed mentioned also sewage. I have a huge issue with this as well, whether it's material or not. Frognal Lane, as it is known, as Councillor Speed said, for flooding and including raw sewage. And quite frankly, I'm not one and would never want to have poo running down my street. And why should anyone in this day and age expect that? But it does currently. Now, when we have excess rainwater at the moment, it runs from the top of the A2 down Frognal Lane, and at the moment, because we've got a nice field there, actually it's a certain amount of drainage. Now, if you're going to build 298 houses on that area, that water's where is it going to go? We've already got a problem. You're taking away land and green space for it to actually soak into. It's going to make it even worse. And as Councillor Speed said, in the last couple of weeks, and I've had first-hand experience of watching these, having a sewage plant that has to have extra tankers go into it every 20 minutes to deal with an issue there is a huge concern for not only the residents of Tenham, but will affect potentially the residents who may want to come into this site as well. There is nothing, in my opinion, that has changed from the last discussion at this planning committee from the applicant, other than we could consider giving the parish council a piece of land. No movement on the GP, no movement on the I think on the access, no move. There's just nothing here that adds benefit to the existing residents of the parish, not only of Tenham but also of Linstead and the wider area. We need housing, there's no doubt about that. This isn't the right place for it, and this certainly the layout is not conducive and will not add any benefit to the area. You will have cars parking on top of other cars, which will make it difficult for the refuse vehicles, should they turn up, to actually get round and make the turn in. I think it's a poor design. It will have huge detrimental impact on the area, and the people who will suffer it are the residents. So think about that, please, members, before coming to your decision. Thank you.
Surinder, did you want to come back? Okay, I guess that was
that a reference to me, Chair?
You have your hand up, yes.
Yeah, yes. I just want to clarify one thing very quickly. I don't want to labour the point, and that is that other legislation, such as the Environment Act, recent or otherwise, are not really pertinent or material considerations for today's purposes. They may well be in decision-making in outline stage, but not for today's purposes. So I would ask the committee to exclude that aspect from their minds in coming to a determination today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. I just think I said last time when this came up for outline planning permission, I actually basically wanted it turned down at that stage, because I didn't think it was a suitable site for it to go any further than the outline planning. But where we are now, I'm afraid I'm going to slightly disagree with the previous speakers. You're speaking very well on behalf of your ward, but they are offering quite a bit, 33% affordable homes. They're going to put an acoustic noise barrier, as I understand, along the railway there, for the noise, and various different things. As the speaker said, 100-year lease now on the sports facilities. So I will listen to the rest of the debate, but at the moment I am likely to go with the office recommendation for acceptance.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are being extremely lenient here, because you know from your chairman's training that once you've moved a motion, then speeches should be relevant to said motion, and most of what's been said hasn't been. So you are being extremely lenient. I read these papers. Obviously, I wasn't here before because I'm subbing tonight. And it said, approval of reserved matters, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. It has already been agreed that there will be houses here. End of story. It's the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale which is up for discussion. Now, I've gone through these papers umpteen times. Thank you, Councillor Bowen, because I was looking for a map. Unfortunately, these are not like binoculars. So can the officer talk through the only relevant to this agenda item points that were made, because all the other points would have come up in the outline planning application, which has already been agreed. The only one was the relevance to car parking, which I took to be layout. That's what I say. I was looking through the papers over and over, looking for some sort of layout, because looking at that, I can't really work out how it's all going to work. And I will say that some years ago, when we were told we could, and I suggested that we had off-site car parking, I was almost lynched, because people have to have a car parking space right outside where they live. So, you know, can we zoom in on that mappy thing, please? Thank you.
Are you able to do that, Matt? Show us some car parking.
Bear with me, Chair. I'm going to do two things. If I just go to the design and access statement, which explains a little bit about layout, and then I'm going to turn to the presentation, or 2 or 3 slides from it that I delivered last time that shows the layout of car parking and so forth. So if you bear with me, Chair. Sorry. So just to highlight, the left-hand image is the master plan that was approved at the outline stage. Now that was done in line with the site allocation, which identified the north portion for the commercial, between the commercial and the residential being the playing pitches, the residential being basically the bottom right-hand semi-rectangular area. And from that, they developed the illustrative master plan approved at the outline stage. So just in terms of the layout and location of the residential... Has someone got there? So the location of the residential and largely the layout follows that agreed at the outline stage and allocated in the local plan. So just moving along from, if I can get it to move one slide. So what the applicant has done in terms of developing the reserved matter, they need to build on and I guess prove that what was sort of outlined at the outline stage becomes more detailed design and far more workable. So they looked at various concepts in terms of, all right, that's what was given at the outline stage. Does it work in reality? Because we're the house builder, we'll need to actually deliver it, and people will need to traverse it with whether it be refuse vehicles or bicycles, or making sure that the homes are adequate in terms of size and access and so forth, and the relationship with things such as sports fields. So they looked at various options, and we discussed these at pre-application stage, and they were tested by the council's urban design officer. There were several iterations narrowed down to sort of a top 3, as it were, and advice was given to them in terms of the advantages and disadvantages and the functionality of the different options in terms of overall layout. Just what that evolved to was sort of a final option, if I could call it option 3, which largely reflects what was then developed into the reserved matters. So for example, there were 3 or 4 options looking at how you might deal with play space or communal open space. I think what was deemed to be more successful is one central larger area rather than lots of little areas, just by way of example in terms of the way that the scheme is involved in terms of its layout, which does follow from the locational requirements and the site allocation and what was secured in the parameters approved by the council at outline stage. So that was just to highlight that. What I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment and put the other presentation up so I can show you things like the detailed reserved matters layout, which includes parking provision and so forth. So what you see, let me just make sure that that's showing. So from what you saw in terms of the emerging proposals, they were then developed into what you see in terms of the reserved matters application. And I'm just going to, so I just won't dwell on this. This is really just to show that not only have they thought about the layout, but also the disposition of where you would have flats, single family homes, terraces, detached and semi-detached dwellings. And the part of what they're doing here is to look at things such as corner buildings and emphasising the design. And they start to develop, I guess what you would say is character areas, so that not only is it functional in terms of the layout to get in and out of, but as you approach the entrances to the site, they've got a different feel to the character of buildings and so forth in the central area. On the right-hand side, that's an image of how they've actually thought through primary routes, secondary routes, tertiary routes, routes for pedestrians and routes for cyclists. And that all helps to inform how the layout's been guided and arrived at in this detailed design stage. I won't dwell on these, except to say on the left-hand image, you've got different housing types, and on the right-hand image, you've got the different heights. So they've actually thought about the relationship with the existing neighbourhood and within the development itself, and where you should put height, where you should have lower scale buildings. So there are parts of the site which lend themselves to having a bit more of a substantial building, and some of the areas of the site where they need to take a more sensitive approach, for example, where they're closer to existing residents. And the design and the layout takes account of that. In terms of car parking, the right-hand image, and I appreciate this is slightly muddled because it was an earlier presentation, but the right-hand image shows where car parking would be located. What they've tried to do is to make sure that individual homeowners can park their cars within either space within the property, and in some cases they have communal car parking areas. So you would have, say, 4 or 5 or half a dozen cars within a car parking area, which is then sort of surrounded by the houses that would use it. What that does is to start to draw cars away from parking on street and put them in an area, for example, to the rear of houses so they're less visible. In addition to the on-site car parking and the communal car parking, there are areas that are dedicated on the street for, say, visitor parking. Now, in addition to doing that, we then required that they run swept path analysis to show that not only can you get all these cars parked in the streets, but you can also at the same time get refuse vehicles and large vehicles like refuse vehicles attending the site without encroaching over curbs or other car parking spaces and so forth. They then also, as one of the reserve matters, is landscaping. So we've talked about access was approved at the outline stage, but layout was not. We're satisfied with the layout, and the arbiter from an urban design perspective is the council's urban design officer, and he's satisfied with the layout of the residential portion. We then have landscaping within the residential portion, but also, particularly to the west, there's a community orchard, there are allotments. To make sure surface water drainage is catered for, there are adequate detention ponds and so forth. There's also some additional trees that's set out in the original committee report, but there's several hundred additional trees that would be planted. So from a landscaping perspective, not only is it woven throughout the residential component, but it's also incorporated particularly to the west of the site. And that's a reserved matter, so layout, landscaping. In terms of scale, which is a reserved matter, that's where I mentioned that they'd actually thought about the footprint of the buildings, the heights of the buildings, and where that would be located and whether it would be acceptable, and the view is that the scale is acceptable. Then, in terms of appearance, you've got sort of non-residential buildings such as the sports pavilion, but largely the appearance relates to the bulk of the built development being the housing. So they've looked at the area, the overall residential area, and developed it into 6 character areas. And without going through this in too much detail, it's just to highlight that they've got 6 character areas. They've looked at the function that they perform, for example, the entrance to the site, and then it has a character and appearance, and that's reflected in the materiality and the type of buildings which within. So there's a different materiality and character within character area 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And just coming back to, you can notice that the northern, the red area towards the top, that performs a function in terms of having a relationship with the sports pitches, but also the entrance to the site for vehicles, for example, and the look and feel of housing in that area. If you look to the right-hand side, that's another edge, and the character of that area also differs. So we're comfortable. I mean, in this case, it's just to highlight that what we can consider from a planning perspective at the reserve matters stage, access was approved at the outline stage, so what we're really looking at is appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, and officers are limited to assessing those things and coming to a conclusion as to whether the reserve matters is acceptable. Just to highlight, in terms of air quality, that was assessed at the outline stage and found to be acceptable, and I'm not able to revisit that within the scope of this application. I do understand the concerns about sewage, but quite frankly, the statutory duty lies with Southern Water, and they really need to do their duty rather than putting the onus on the applicant. It's more taking Southern Water to task to actually do what they do. And again, whilst I've got every sympathy in terms of the sewage matter, it doesn't relate to landscaping, layout, scale or appearance, and I can't really take that into account from a planning perspective in determining the application. In terms of the healthcare provision, again, I appreciate that there is an area of land identified on the site and earmarked for healthcare. The NHS have advised me that that area is too small to be used by them, so it can't be developed for that purpose. There is a financial contribution secured in the Section 106. Unfortunately, what has transpired is that the former healthcare facility was privately owned. The private owner cancelled the lease and sold the site, leaving Tenham without a GP surgery. But again, I can't link that to landscaping, layout, scale or appearance, or to apportion the blame for cancelling the lease and selling the site to the applicant. They have agreed in terms of the lease terms for things like the allotments, the sports facilities and pavilion, they've agreed that 25 years, which was what was agreed by the council back in 2021, is not sufficient. So they've agreed to either gift it to the parish council, or if the council don't want to take on the responsibility of the freehold, to lease it for a 100-year period for a peppercorn rent. So in terms of addressing the reasons the scheme was deferred, I feel the applicant has done that. Looking at the planning perspective in terms of the reserve matters relating to landscaping, layout, scale and appearance, again, I can't find a fault with the scheme. I think it's policy compliant in relation to the matters, the planning matters that I can consider. I hope that answers your question.
I think it probably did.
Chair, thank the officer very much for answering those questions. In relation to your recommendation on the matters before us, I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Did you hear the thank yous? Yeah. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. My question has been answered before I asked it, so I've got nothing further to say, and I think everything has been well covered.
Councillor Winkliff.
Thank you, Chair. One other question I'd like to ask, unless I've missed it in the document somewhere. If we are minded to pass this tonight, can we have a condition put on all construction traffic to the site would use the A2 and not the lower Raynham Road, and not a lower road, Tenham there? Is that possible?
That does seem reasonable. Can we include that, Matt, if we haven't already?
So the intention is to come off the A2. There isn't an explicit, so at present there's not an explicit prohibition for all construction traffic. That said, I completely understand the concern. I'd need to talk to the applicant about that, but I think a condition, yes, Chair, Frognal Lane is not an appropriate road for heavy traffic. I could just imagine a situation though, if, for example, a contractor on a motorbike wanted to leave work for the day down Frognal Lane, that wouldn't really cause an issue. So to ban all construction traffic, I could just see that there could be some very minor situations where a contractor trying to get to work on can you see what I mean? To ban all...
I think that would probably be the case in just about every instance when we tried to ban construction traffic, though, so there must be a level of understanding on that, otherwise it would always happen.
And we could talk about weight limits and that sort of thing.
Chair,
Cassie, do you want to propose that condition, Councillor Winkles?
I propose that condition, but I just want to add some.
Can I come in there, please, Chair?
Go on
Can I
then.
come in?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry to impose myself. I had my hand up, so obviously it's got missed. But the point is that a condition to regulate traffic on that basis would be entirely unenforceable. That's one of the criteria for conditions. One of the 5 criteria is enforceability. So that condition would not stand, I'm afraid. So I'd advise against it.
We do have it on other developments, such as at Kemsley. So how is it enforceable in some and not in this one?
Well, I can't really say anything about a condition imposed on any other development. All I can say in this case is that it is not enforceable. And if you can actually tell me how it could be enforced effectively, then that's fine. But really, it can't. It can be imposed as an informative, but not as a condition.
Okay, Tony, had you finished? I think we might have to come back to that.
If I could can I just quickly come back? I've listened to what the chap said. If we could have it on an informative, then, if possible, if I've got a seconder for that.
Well, we have these on other developments, so I'd like some clarity on this. Councillor Harrison.
I was going to say, Chair, over many years, what we're talking about is them vehicles that come in and out that need the wheel wash facilities. Not me on my little Fiat coming to and from work. Fiesta, not Fiat. So whatever the normal terminology is, whereby you have the wheel washing facility, that's what needs. I think Councillor Winkles is referring to, not me coming and going from my place of work every day. And there would be a form of words because we've had them for years. It's just finding it on the shelf somewhere.
Councillor Hunt, is this on this particular item?
It is.
Go ahead.
I've dealt with this quite a bit in other developments, and what we've dealt with before was it being in the construction management plan, which can then be enforced. And if you've got matters in there that then have to give signage to say where the construction traffic have to go to, then that is what is enforced. And if they don't follow the signage, it then comes back on the developer as an enforcement issue. So I don't know, though, if construction management plan is dealt with in the outline and whether that's something that can't be done at this stage.
Can we take a 10-minute deferral? We're just deferring for 10 minutes. everybody back? Is Councillor Marchington coming back shortly? Okay, we'll resume the meeting. Can I ask Matt to summarise where we are?
So just in terms of the concern about use of Frognal Lane for construction traffic, yes, a condition can be imposed essentially prohibiting construction vehicles from using Frognal Lane. If the applicant needed, for example, some flexibility to that, they would apply through like a minor material amendment or a non-material amendment, depending on what it is that they wanted.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne, did you want to come in on that?
Yes, please, may. Thank you. Much as I hoped this was going to go another way, should this be passed, then I think that's a very sensible criteria. But to note, also, for those, again, may not be aware, Frognal Lane, as it currently is, and it makes this even more important, 95% give or take of Frognal Lane does not have a footpath. So vehicles, pedestrians have no means other than walking in the road. And with respect to the officer, he also said just before we adjourned that Frognal Lane was not suitable for heavy traffic, which makes it even more important that should this be agreed, that actually site vehicles should not be allowed to use Frognal Lane or the lower road or Station Road, so it doesn't put any more of the blight to the existing residents. Thank you.
So, are you moving that moving that condition? Right, Councillor Winkler, are you moving that condition?
I am moving that condition.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carnell. Okay, if anybody wish to speak to that condition, okay, come and see those in favour of the condition. Okay, that's carried. Those against and abstentions? 2. Okay, we will continue the debate, and I have Councillor Thompson.
Just like to go back to the overall design, really. Could we pop up the picture again, Matt? Is that okay? Thanks.
Councillor, the site layout?
Yes, yeah, thank you. While he's saying, I just wanted to point out, for me, things where that haven't been taken into account. One, we all know we've declared a climate emergency, and we have a responsibility to act on that, to try and defend our natural spaces as much as possible. And with that, when we build something, I think we should really be mindful of what we're building. Are we just being governed by who wants to build in the design? For me, this is just an old pastiche of the 60s and 70s, very focused on the car, and the fact that the site is isolated from its integrated sort of nature and living, whereas if that was brought together and landscaped much better, with much better passive design and the use of the build, so we could get energy from that, it would be much better and have much more longevity. Whereas what I think will happen is this will become fairly run down. To the left won't get used much, then that will become housing again. I think what we need to do is move away from this particular design, which is focused around returning a good profit for the builder, The house designs themselves with their very steep pitch roofs means they haven't got very strong integrity to the roof. That's why you're doing it that way. The orientation of all the houses, none of them face south. So that's quite an important factor. That means that what they'll be doing is they'll be adding a little thing to make us feel good about solar panels. But in fact, if they did those in little condensed rows facing directly south, change the whole orientation of the design, we could then have a much more integrated design. And I think that's what we're here for, is the actual design, the landscaping. And for me, it's really poorly thought out. And I think for future developments, we have a responsibility to think about the materials, what we build it with, why we're building it, how it feels to the occupants, and that sort of design of small windows, which is what's happening as well, to obviously reduce energy use. And I was just talking earlier, when we give outline planning permission, what are the rules on energy? So what's already written in that we can control? Is that right, Matt? If you could explain.
Can you answer those questions?
Yes, so the way it works, at the outline stage, a developer's required to give an energy strategy which sets out their approach. And if that is a sensible approach, then it's logical. Remember, at the outline stage, we don't know the detailed design and location unless those aren't reserved matters. So we need a very clear direction of travel that indicates that it would be possible to meet energy planning policies at the detailed design stage. Now, the requirement to meet those strategies at the detailed design stage appears as a condition imposed on the outline consent. In this case, it's condition 40, and that requires, ahead of submission of reserved matters, the detailed energy strategy for how they're going to achieve it. So the reserved matters themselves need to adhere to the condition relating to energy. So the condition relating to energy has been discharged. They've put forward a strategy. I don't have the strategy in front of me, but there is a separate condition discharge application that contains all of that information. Then once that is approved, it needs to go hand in glove with the reserved matters. So I guess the reserved matters you see before you are compliant with the detailed energy designs and strategy that were imposed on the outline permission.
Okay, so we don't have a set figure for the outline energy strategy. So in other words, 40% on-site production, 20% 5.
I'd need to read the condition, and it will set out what the reduction over building control regs would be, and then to meet the terms of the condition, they'll then need to provide a strategy that does that.
Right. So there's nothing.
Through the chair, Councillor Thompson.
Sorry. Oh, what was that?
Did you wish to come back?
Oh yeah, no. I was just trying to I was just trying to understand that when we set outline planning permissions, that we have definite figures, and I just want to try and get my head around that. So then we can look at implementing those as the planning, if you like, the other permissions that are given after outline. Because the problem I seem to see is that a lot of it gets eroded away once outline's been given, and we then can't impose things on that. So that was one of the things I'm concerned about. I think there's been also no thought to a standard, to a high standard, and I think we need to try and bring that up. And again, better design, better use of materials, an understanding of I can't think of the words now, of what's embedded when they build these buildings in roads and construction. It's just not very well thought out. And I think with a better design, better orientation, we'd have better passive use of energy. For me, I wouldn't want to pass this. It's not thought out very well.
Kerry?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, within the report, it sets out that the development will achieve a 56% reduction in carbon compared to building regs, so it will be 56. Yeah, so it will be exceeding that of building regulations.
Okay, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to start off just with a question to the officer about the parking. You mentioned that there was some parking in a cluster. How many car parking spaces are in that cluster? And do the front of the houses or the back of the houses face in cluster?
Can I remind you to talk through the chair, Councillor Palmer? It's not for conversations with the officer.
Okay, through the chair then, how many car parking spaces are in them clusters, and do the houses face front or back? Thank you.
Matt?
Chair, that's contained in the original committee report, but I need to scroll through it to do that. I then need to get the detailed drawings to pull up where those clusters are. It's just not something I know off the top of my head. I was really focused on the deferred reasons.
Okay, whilst we're looking for that, did you have anything else?
Yeah.
Yep.
I like Councillor Thompson's, the way he summed it up. I think he's highlighted some very good points about the design and the layout of it. I do have concerns about the car parking, which I think is one of the things that we're deciding tonight, because I think to have a cluster of car parking spaces, in my experience, leads to antisocial behaviour. In my experience, if people can't see their car, they will park somewhere else, possibly just outside the front of the house. So that's what I feel will be a problem. You will have empty car parking spaces and people parking outside their houses. So I feel there will be an increase in antisocial behaviour. I do have real concerns about this. I mean, I live in Newington. I'm a ward member for Newington, so I know about air quality quite well. And it's strange, we had an application about 12 months ago, maybe slightly longer, and yet, as the chair alluded to earlier, they used readings from another site within Sittingbourne at St Paul's. I'm not overly enamoured with what's gone on there, what's on offer tonight. I think the parish councillor, the chairman of the parish council, I think summed it up very well. I think it's I hear what the legal advisor says, but I do feel Councillor Thompson summed up that there are design problems with that, and I feel that the parking may cause future problems for the residents, because I know wherever you get an empty space or car parks, you will get young youths assembling there and being a bugbear for the ward councillors and the residents for many years. So I think the design could be slightly better to ensure that all the cars can be seen and well parked in front of the houses. Thank you.
Do we have clarity on the car parking? Yeah.
So just bear with me. In terms of breaking it down, if I give headline figures, so 681 car parking spaces, including 102 visitor spaces. The ratio of visitor spaces is based on the parking standards. They're evenly distributed. 45 spaces for the sports pavilion. But in terms of actually looking at the breakdown in terms of exactly where they are and providing those plans, Chair, that would take me a bit longer.
Do we consider this a pertinent issue for the decision?
No.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to pick up on some of the points made, what seems like a very long time ago now, by the Chairman of Tenham Parish Council. I agree with him that the design is far too car-centric. There's no separate walking or cycling routes that are away from roads. There are no pedestrian-only areas. Why, for example, couldn't there be a 3-kilometre run and walk circuit around the circumference of the site to encourage healthy activity? Notwithstanding the pretty pictures that the officer put up a bit earlier, and developers are always very good at producing pretty pictures, it's going to be a pretty sterile environment. They're just plonking 300 boxes down. The green as a central square should be a focal point for community interaction with perhaps a cafe or a corner shop or a parcel collection point, but there are no new amenities in this development. Also, early drawings showed loads of tree planting. Now there's just a smattering of trees across the estate to cram more houses in. We should be seeing people-centric design. What we've got here is car-centric design. And whilst I think about it, Chair, when we come to make a decision, could I request a recorded vote, please?
Councillor Hunt. Did you indicated earlier? I've got you down. No. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I haven't seen on the design. How many areas are single storey or long-term housing for elderly and things?
Matt, would you like to answer that?
Bear with me, Chair. The slide on the right indicates the type of housing, or the height of... It's not showing. It's not showing. It's still not showing. Chair, the slide on the right indicates building heights, the dark blue being, or the yellow is single story, blue is 2 to 2.5, and dark blue are flatted blocks, which are 2.5 to 3, depending on, I could show you the elevations. I think you read them as 2.5 to 3 stories.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Sorry, yeah, does that mean all the yellows are bungalows then?
Not bungalows, are they?
The yellow would be car parking spaces with roofs above them, apart from the northernmost yellow, which is a single-storey sports pavilion.
Ah, so I've replied.
Yep, go ahead.
Just what I'm trying to understand is how many are at ground floor level and fully accessible. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sorry, on ground floor level and fully accessible.
Wheelchair accessible?
Yeah.
There is a condition requiring a certain proportion to be wheelchair accessible. I can't identify for you which ones they are, but I can confirm that the scheme provides the requisite number of wheelchair units.
Okay. If there's nobody else, Councillor Bowen.
Just to clarify on that last point, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no actual bungalows scheduled for this particular site, but it could be, the wheelchair access could be within other buildings or the flats, but I don't think there are any bungalows on this site.
No, there are no bungalows.
Okay, a recorded vote has been requested, so Councillor Bowen.
Against.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Speed.
Against.
Councillor Marchington. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Carnell.
For.
Councillor Palmer.
Against.
Councillor Winklis.
For.
Councillor Valleys.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Hayden. Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Harrison. Okay, I'm against. Have I missed anybody? I've only got 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Others. Okay, so that is passed by 9 votes to 5. The next item will be item 2.3, which is 22/503/908/full Lander Eden Top. We'll just wait a couple of minutes. Okay, we're doing 22/503/908/full land at Eden Top, Sheppey Way, Bobbing, and can I ask the officer to provide an update, please?
Hello, thank you, Chair. This application relates to the removal, Section 73 application for the removal of two conditions. Condition 3, an occupancy restriction condition, and Condition 4, the use of the land. So the... Oh, sorry. Sorry, so the original consent was granted in 2009. It was granted on appeal and allowed for the change of use of land to use as a residential caravan site for one gypsy family with two caravans, including one static caravan, erection of an amenity block and laying of hard standing. So the application site is located in Bobbing, just along the Sheppey Way. In terms of landmarks, members will probably be more familiar with the crematorium, which is directly opposite the site, and you also have the Dancing Dog Saloon, which is further to the north of the site. The application site is just here. So this is the location plan, and just shows you that the application site outlined in red, and then the larger site which is in the same land ownership. Because this is a Section 73 application, there isn't really many plans that I can show you because it is just for the removal of the conditions. So this is the original consent that was granted on appeal. You can see it's the same site plan and land ownership that's presented under this application. And just in terms of the layout of this site, there's an existing barn, an amenity block which is there now, and two mobile home caravans were granted on the site. As I say, I haven't got many plans to show you, but I'll move on to some photographs of the site. This is the site itself, looking back towards Sheppey Way. And a further one standing south, looking back over the site itself. This shows you the development that's on the site at the moment, which is approved by the Planning Inspectorate, which was a amenity block and a home. And then these are just wider views of the site itself, including the existing stable block that's already there. Barn which is used for stables. As I say, there isn't many plans to show you. It is just the removal of the occupancy condition for Mr. Beck. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, is Nathaniel Green online? Do we have Nathaniel Green online, the agent? Okay, Mr. Green, would you like to speak? Okay, in that case, can Mr. Ashby from... Okay, we'll have the statement read out first and then carry on. So, yeah, we're going to read the statement first, Mr. Ashby, and then you'll speak. So, Kelly?
This committee is here to decide the matter on planning issues only. This application for the removal of conditions 3 and 4 of SW 090972. Planning permission was granted on the 1st of February 2011, permitting the change of use of land to use as a residential caravan site for one gypsy family. Conditions 3 and 4 limits the occupation of the site to be carried on only by Mr. Robert Beck and his resident dependents. A permanent change of use has already been established on the site. The planning permission has been fully implemented in accordance with the approved plans and conditions. As the removal of conditions 3 and 4 is not a material change of use, both national and local plan policies are not directly applicable to the determination of this application. This application does not alter the existing use of the site. Condition 2 of the appeal decision will remain in place, which requires the site to be occupied only by a gypsy stroke traveller. Swale Borough Council's GTAA 2018 identifies a need for 76 residential gypsy pitches in Swale in the period up to 2037/38. This is broken down into a need of 59 pitches for gypsy and traveller households that meet the planning definition, as well as up to 17 additional pitches for households that may meet the definition. It is therefore clear that there is a need for gypsy pitches in the borough. Eden Top is one of the 126 pitches currently in use throughout the borough. The abandonment of the site following the end of the occupation by Mr Beck and his resident dependents will reduce the available number of pitches and therefore increase the unmet need. Therefore, it would be inappropriate to refuse the removal of condition 3 as the council still has an unmet need for gypsy pitches. In refusing to remove conditions 3 and 4, the council would be in breach of paragraphs 55 and 56 of the NPPF. On this basis, I urge you to approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Mr Ashby, we have 3 minutes.
My name is Derek Ashby, and I've lived with my family at Upper Toes, a listed building, for 41 years. Eden Top is adjacent to Upper Toes and is a site of approximately 7 acres. I would like to make it clear that the Becks have been good neighbours and my reservations are not made about them personally. Application SW090972 was overwhelmingly refused by all parties in the Planning Committee in October 2009. It was allowed on appeal by the Inspector on the 1st of February 2011. When the application at Eden Top in 2009 was put to the Planning Committee, a planning officer denied that the site was an important local countryside gap, a denial that he had to correct at a public meeting a short while later. August 2015, permission was refused to increase total number of pitches on the site to 6. October 2017, permission was refused for another caravan and extension to the amenity block. Section 73 allows the local planning authority to consider removal of conditions made by a planning inspector. However, to remove or vary the inspector's conditions, our understanding from information we received is that the decision would need to be justified by a change in national or local planning policy. Conditions 3 and 4 do not fall within this category. Removal of any conditions would be against the spirit of the appeal decision and, if allowed, would make a mockery of the whole planning and appeal system. Permission was based on the need to care for horses and that it would retain the open nature of the land and protect the important local countryside gap. Last year, an application from SS Scrap was submitted for a vehicle operator's licence at Eden Top. This was refused. These applications give an indication of what is desired on this site by the applicant. Consideration must be given to the likely repercussions for neighbours, the Garden of England crematorium, the Borough of Swale and the countryside gap. This site is right opposite the Garden of Eden crematorium, and we need to remember that this is a sensitive place, is used by families across the whole of Swale and further. We must not go down the path of allowing it to become a scrap metal site or a large traveller site. In order to protect the security of that final journey to people's funerals, I hope that we can maintain the status quo and refuse this application. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr Ashby. I will move the officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, this is a bit of a difficult one for me. I do take on the concerns of the speaker, but looking at the previous history, I'm afraid to say I think we would find it very difficult to turn this down, but I will listen to the rest of the debate before I make my mind up. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, can you confirm what it is about the previous history you think would make it difficult to agree with, given that everything that's happened in the past has been turning it down?
Well, 3.3 and 3.4.
The other conditions that are being sought to be removed.
I'll listen to the rest of the debate then, thank you.
Pardon?
I say I'll listen to the rest of the debate.
Councillor Palmer.
I have a problem with this. You have here an application to remove conditions in place by a planning inspector. This was refused, as has been highlighted, and the planning inspector was quite specific. The occupation of the site is hereby permitted only by Mr. Beck and his resident family, and he gave reasons why and what should happen to the land after that period. And I think when you've got a planning inspector putting that type of condition on, I think we should think very, very carefully before we remove it. I think had this been for a general traveller site, I think the planning inspector would have probably refused it as it being in an appropriate location. So to remove the conditions and to open it up, I think would drive a coach and horses through any application where a traveller says, I have special needs or I have a family reason, then we should be considering it not on the case of the family reason, but that at some stage further it will become a site in general use. This was only permitted because of the restrictions placed on it. And it was quite clear that within 6 months it should be restored to how it was. So I tend to support I tend to feel that we should not support the officer on this, but that we should refuse the removal of the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. I'll just mention as well in 3.5, he says, my personal conditions 3 and 4 go further, indicating that a permanent approval to Mr. Beck arises from his strong economic links to horses and that this particular need for a residential presence in the countryside is an overriding reason to granting permission. So there is a clear steer there, but it was granted permission for some very specific reasons. We are being asked to basically remove those specific reasons. And I have concerns when we are, as you say, overriding what an inspector has made very clearly. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. I also picked up on 3.5. So, but the officer is recommending. Well, actually, the officer's recommending that we delegate for them to go off and negotiate. Blah blah blah. Could the officer be? I was going to say, could you explain why you think that? But that sounds a bit, doesn't it? How can I put it in a nice, polite way? There must be something there that the officer has made that particular recommendation. And as I go on the basis that, you know, my 10 hours is nothing like your 10 years experience, you know, I'm loath to go against an officer recommendation. There's clearly something there that I've missed.
So can you...
Sarcasm, that is honesty.
Can you clarify why basically we are being asked to agree with removing some very specific conditions?
So at the time, Mr. Beck was living there at the time that the planning appeal was granted. Now Mr. Beck no longer resides at the property, although his dependents do. In terms of the actual use of removing these, it won't make any difference to the actual use that the planning inspector has granted on the site. So it will still be a gypsy family living there, whether it be Mr. Beck or another gypsy family. It would still be those within the site. Nothing else on the site has changed for us to consider any other. Sorry.
Okay. It says on 3.5 that specifies the strong economic links to horses, and a particular need for residents is the overriding reason for granting permission. Is there still the strong economic link to horses?
There is equestrian use still occurring on the site. The agent has confirmed in writing that the site is still needed for equestrian use. When I visited the site myself, the old barn is being used as stables, and there were a number of horses at the site. So I have got confirmation that still occurs there, yes.
So then really what we should be looking at is not a removal of conditions 3 and 4, but a new application on the same basis as the original application with the same conditions, but attached to the new resident with an economic link. I'll let Rebecca answer first.
Well,
Sorry, whether they should be putting in a new application for
well, instead of removing 2 conditions which were specific for the use in the countryside, we should be actually what we should be looking for is a new application that will maintain that direct link, rather than just removing 2 conditions.
Well, whether you do it under this application, even if they came in with a new application for the site to be used as a gypsy site, then it would still be a gypsy family who would live on the site. This way it still allows a gypsy family and the site to be used as a gypsy site as which it was first approved for.
Well, no, it was approved because of the strong economic links. Let's not... Okay, Andy.
yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points to members which might help them with their decision making. Firstly, if I can point members to paragraph 6.12 and 6.13 of the report, members will see that the latest Gypsy and Traveller assessment, which is actually updated from the one that the agent has referred to, that assessment was carried out in December 2023 and has identified a greater need now for 114 pitches, of which 80 are required in the 5-year period. Our view is that this is an existing site which is currently fire condition, only permitted to be allowed by Mr. Beck to reside there, but actually it has the potential to help meet that identified need by allowing a wider member of the Gypsy and Traveller community to occupy it. We feel that the site's been there for 15 years. Yes, it's in the important local countryside gap, but it has integrated to a degree into that area over that time. It's fairly discreet because it's set back quite far from the roadside, and our view is actually it's a reasonable site to help go towards that need in the latest GTAA. Thank you.
But surely part of the reason it's integrated is because it has that business use with equestrianism, which we're not seeking to condition under this new removal of conditions.
I don't feel the integration is dependent on the equestrian use. The equestrian use can still continue side by side to the site. The site can be occupied by a family that's not necessarily connected to that equestrian use. It will still be one mobile home, one touring caravan, still be the same site, the same amenity block. It will just be a different occupier. So our view is that in the circumstances, based on the need, that's acceptable.
So what we're coming down to is basically a new site. We need to look at this. Would this be a site we would consider suitable for Gypsy and Traveller encampment, irrespective of the past, because that, the past was related to those conditions. So what we're asking is this a suitable gypsy and traveller site?
Yes and no. I think that the history is relevant. It has existed for 15 years as a gypsy and traveller site, which, although personal, hasn't got a direct connection to the equestrian use. There's no reason why, if Mr. Beck stopped using the adjacent land for equestrian purposes, that he couldn't continue living on the land. But essentially, yes, we're in a territory where we need to provide sites. We need to make sometimes difficult decisions about where those sites go. But our view is actually, in the context of this application and this site, it's a reasonable site for the condition to be lifted and for the site to be used by the wider gypsy and traveller community. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. So are we talking of that whole green section, or are we talking about the little blue bit that covered? I just want to know what we're talking about. How much of that? Is it the whole? So it's that blue line? Oh, the little red line. That's what I was trying to get, because someone said 7 acres and that threw me a bit. Okay, so all we're talking about is the piece of land within the little red section. Okay, thanks.
I also ought to mention that Boughton Parish Council are here tonight but didn't register to speak in time. Councillor Harrison.
I'm still not clear, Chair. I'm not going to say I wasn't here, because I probably was here all that time ago. This committee turned it down, said, no, we don't want a gypsy site here. It went to appeal, and the bloke says, well, no, we're not talking about a gypsy site, we're talking about a gypsy family with the economic business of horses, blah, 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 blah. Feel free if I've got this, it's too simple. What I'm reading is, if this had just been a gypsy site, the inspector would probably have supported the council in turning it down. Because it was this horse business stuff, he was quite happy to go against rules and regs and all the rest of it, to say, no, this is quite integral. This man and his family, dependents, whatever it said, as long as they're running a business there, I haven't got a problem them being there. That's what I've read here. What I haven't read here is that it should be I'm quite happy that you have a gypsy site in the area, a gypsy site. This is not a gypsy site, this is a site for Mr. Robert Beck and his resident dependents. Am I reading it too simply? I mean, I'm to be perfectly honest, I could come down either way, okay? I've not got one of these, we don't want people here, we don't want people there. But if there are rules, and I've sat here in the past where we've had a temporary structure, quite literally in the middle of the countryside, and not long afterwards, it was made permanent, somewhere we would never in a million years have had it. So I'm very loath to do this, and especially when you've got a planning inspector involved, who are like God, aren't they?
Your understanding is very similar to mine, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm similar to other people on this, and I'm rather torn. Surely we cannot have planning permissions that are granted or not granted against an individual. That is, to me, is completely wrong. It's nothing to do with the person, and that's not what it says in here either. As has been said, 3.5, the main point around this is not I don't think the individual, it is the fact of the economic work and the horses. So as long as that part is maintained, and the inspector is saying that's the basis of his decision, then I think we should be respecting that decision, because it's not on the person, it's on the condition of the business and the and the work that actually goes on there. It's not the individual, it's the horses. And I think we'll be very... And to have a position, again, I think Councillor Harrison's correct, but in the position of where this committee would said no, inspector said yes, but, and then we turn around and say yes, but we'll agree the rest of it. Well, what the hell? Sorry, what's the point of refusing in the first place? Just seems a bit bizarre to me. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. I'm torn with this one because I agree with what's been said. I think it's been approved for a particular reason, and that reason should stick. But the only thing that hasn't really been, the officers have said it, but members haven't, is that we've only got a 1.3 year supply of sites. So that is the issue, I think, that saying that, okay, it hasn't got the horse use doing it, but actually nothing actually changes on that site. You've still got the touring pitch, the communal block, and it'll be a gypsy family as it has been. So I think that is the issue here. If we had a 5-year supply, we could quite easily turn these things down and say, well, no, because it's not linked to that business anymore, and no, we're not doing it. But the fact we haven't got that sorted out is the same as a house. If this was a house that had a rural worker in there and that was the approval, but he was then going to start moving out and an application came up for when we needed housing, we haven't got a 5-year supply, we're probably looking at approving that as well, when it wouldn't normally be allowed. But that is what I think it comes down to, and I think I would like to say yes, don't agree this, but because of that issue I'm not so sure we can.
Councillor Palmer.
I mean, I see it as part and parcel, actually, condition 3 and 4. It's a personal reserved matter to Mr. Beck in relation to his horse business. If the two don't meet, then the inspector would never have said, well, because it's just horses, we can let everyone live there. It was part and parcel. And I'd like to know, is there a shelf life to conditions? Because that's what we're saying, is after so long, a condition is no longer a condition. We can just get rid of it. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, something that's in my head is that I feel that, okay, it was horses, so it's a rural activity. That's why the permission was given. We're short, as said, especially of small rural accommodation for rural activities in where there are rural activities. For me, I feel if they want to carry on a rural activity and someone lives there, fine. I think that's the key point. Otherwise, it will start to erode again. That's my feeling anyway.
Okay, those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that is refused. Does anybody have a motion to... what do you want to do now? Councillor Hunt.
It should be refused because of the restriction that's on there with the keeping of horses will fall away if it's taken off, and because of it being in a important local countryside gap in a remote area, that with that condition, the balance of the weight doesn't push it in favour, even though there's no 5-year supply.
Okay, would anyone like to second that? Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on that? Councillor Speed.
I'd just like to add the point that to approve it would go against a very specific ruling of a planning inspector.
And maybe we should have something about have a benefits don't outweigh the harm. Have a benefits don't outweigh the harm.
That's that's sort of what I was saying, with even though there's no 5-year supply, the balance of that being in a remote area in the local countryside gap doesn't outweigh the benefits of the use for conditions and restrictions for the horses and rural workers.
In your reasoning, did you include the need for the link between the accommodation and the land use?
Yeah, that's the use. So the use, the conditions that are there, that the use of that land is only because of the horses and the rural workers. That is the main thing. And then because of it being in local countryside gap and remote, even considering the 5-year supply, those benefits don't weigh in favour of it.
Right. Okay, would anybody like to comment on that? In which case, those in favour of the recommendation to refuse on those bases, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Abstentions? That's anybody who hasn't voted yet. 3. So that reason is passed. Right, we'll go to item 2.2, 23/504/909/REM. Land at Lady Dane Farm, Love Lane, Faversham. Can we have an officer update? Huh? Over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. This application is for the approval of reserved matters of a 67-bed care home, which is part of the wider redevelopment of land at Lady Dane Farm. There are no updates to provide since the report was published. Lady Dane Farm is located to the eastern side of Faversham. The application site, outlined here in red, forms part of a wider development site outlined in blue on this map, whereby hybrid planning permission was granted in May 2023 for a mixed-use redevelopment of the site. The parent hybrid planning application consisted of 2 parts. The first part was for full planning permission for 84 residential dwellings, 3 commercial units and access of Love Lane. The second part was for outline planning permission with all matters reserved for 70 residential dwellings, enterprise land, a day nursery and care home. This application for approval of reserved matters specifically relates to the land identified for the location of the care home, which is outlined here in red. The application site was previously used as farmland, as was the land to the north, east and south, which also forms part of the wider development site. The western boundary of the site fronts Love Lane, with post-war housing adjoining to the west. The site is within the settlement boundary of Faversham and forms part of the site allocation MU6 under the local plan. The site is not within or adjoining a conservation area and does not contain or adjoin a listed building. This is a photo of the site taken from Love Lane. This is a photo of the site taken from the northeastern corner of the site, looking back towards Love Lane. This photo shows the adjoining properties to the west of the site that front onto Love Lane. This is a photo of the land to the north of the care home site, which is also part of the wider development site. In the distance, you can see an earlier phase of the Lady Dane Farm development, which has recently been constructed. And here is a closer view of the recently constructed development to the north. The application seeks to obtain reserved matters approval for the care home site, including matters associated with access, layout, scale, appearance, and landscaping. The proposed care home would provide 67 bedrooms, including 32 bedrooms at ground floor level and 35 bedrooms at first floor level, with approximately 380 square meters of internal amenity space. The site gains access on its eastern boundary via a new road off Love Lane, which was approved as part of the detailed element of the hybrid application. The proposed layout of the building also largely reflects that illustrated in the hybrid permission. However, the car park has been relocated from the eastern boundary by the main access point to the southern boundary to better facilitate access to the main building entrance, which is located centrally along the southern facade. The floor plans indicate that the proposed care home will provide functional internal layouts. The ground floor amenities include dining areas, a cafe, communal lounge areas, and hair salon. All habitable spaces are provided with pleasant outlook into the gardens and outdoor communal areas. Officers consider to provide a good standard, and this shows the second floor level where the back of house facilities are located. The proposal establishes a mass which correlates with the floor plans and sits comfortably within the site and surrounding context. In this slide, we can see how the proposal would relate to the scale of nearby existing and future development. And this slide shows the southern and western elevations. And here we have the northern and eastern elevations. The proposed design incorporates features identified in the character study of the area, including the use of large hipped roof forms with gable ends and expressive gable features. The secondary material of white timber style horizontal cladding, which is used on the main entrance gable and the two gables of the day spaces with terraces. This helps break up the elevation visually and improve legibility. This is a visualization of the proposed care home from the landscaping approach focuses upon the provision of a central courtyard space with areas of soft landscape surrounding the building to soften its appearance and provide smaller areas of private amenity off the ground floor bedrooms. Open space is also provided in the northwest. The energy strategy for the development includes solar panels and air source heat pumps.
Okay, we keep losing you, Ben.
Very good. Compliance with the policy requirement. Pardon?
We keep losing you.
Sorry, keep going. Oh, I'll keep going. Hopefully we're all right. So the proposal would achieve BREEAM very good in compliance with the policy requirement, and water consumption will be lower than the 110 litre per person per day requirement. The proposal also provides 5 electric vehicle charge points, with the remaining spaces provided with passive provision to allow for future charge points to be installed. A total of 27 parking spaces are to be provided, which is in accordance with the Swale parking standards. 15 of these spaces are to be dedicated for staff. There are also 3 mobility impaired parking bays located near to the entrance, alongside an emergency vehicle bay. The proposal also includes 12 covered and secured cycle parking spaces. The KCC Highways Officer advises the proposal is acceptable. The details of the proposed care home are considered to align with the development parameters established by the hybrid planning permission. Furthermore, the Reserve Matters planning application accords with national and local planning guidance in respect of matters associated with access, layout, scale, landscaping, and appearance. As such, the proposals are considered acceptable and compliant with MPPF guidance and local plan policies. It is therefore recommended that the Reserve Matters application be approved as set out in the officer report.
Thank you. Can Mr. Ryan Nichols, please? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman and members of this committee, for giving me the opportunity to address you today. And I'd also like to thank council officers for their involvement and their report. As set out in your officer's report, this application seeks the approval of reserved matters for the care home that forms part of the wider hybrid planning permission for Lady Dane Farm. The principle of a care home on this site has therefore already been established. Aspire is partnered with Barchester Healthcare to deliver this care home. Founded in 1992, Barchester own and operate over 240 care homes that consistently meet and exceed relevant regulatory standards. Barchester deliver exceptional levels of care to over 11,000 residents and employ over 17,000 dedicated people. They're at the forefront of the care home sector through their provision of award-winning care, investing in their employees through training, continuous development and sector-leading reward packages. This will be a fantastic care home to serve the Faversham community, whilst at the same time providing employment opportunities that will benefit the local economy. Your officer's report endorses the design approach for the care home, acknowledging how it responds to local features, including the use of red brick, white timber, and provision of statement chimneys and the use of interesting brick details. The proposed design includes the use of hipped roof forms with gable ends and expressive gable features along elevations that highlight building entrances and day spaces. The proposal massing correlates and sits comfortably within the site and surrounding context. A planning condition attached to the original permission further controls these details, giving members increased comfort that the high-quality design shown will be delivered. Aspire have sought to address all comments and concerns raised during the course of the application by meeting with the Town Council and liaising with officers. As summarised clearly in the committee report, the proposals have been amended to respond to a number of points, including the provision of additional EV charging point, revised soft landscaping within the parking area to improve the setting of the building and enhance biodiversity net gain, and additional covered cycle storage increasing from 8 to 12 spaces. No objections have been raised from any of the Council's expert technical officers. Your officer's recommendation to approve is subject to the completion of a deed of variation to the Section 106 for the hybrid planning permission. As set out in their report, the variation does not seek to amend the overall value of contributions, but to more clearly define which uses on the site attract payments and how those payments are proportionately allocated. To be clear, there is no loss, removal or reduction of any contributions due for the development as a whole. This reserved matters application therefore provides the further detail required to build on the outline approval. It is compliant with the existing planning permission and planning policy. It will deliver a high-quality, purpose-built care home run by a sector-leading care operator with a reputation for excellence, both for its residents and staff. The care home provides clear benefits in meeting local need for care facilities and creating local employment opportunities. I therefore respectfully request that you endorse your officer's recommendation and resolve to approve this reserved matters application. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Any speakers? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple of points or queries I hope the officer might be able to help with on this. First of all, in terms of the access, can I just clarify that the route in is wide enough for almost two vehicles to be passing at the same time, or is it a single vehicle entry?
Who's doing this one? Oh, are you able to hear that? Okay, Ben.
Yes, thank you,
Yep.
Chair. I can hear that fine. Yes, that access allows for two vehicles to pass to each other.
Okay, thank you. Tick. Following on, then the emergency bay. Thinking about the size of an ambulance, looking at that bay doesn't seem to be particularly any bigger than the other parking bays. I'd be slightly concerned that actually is that really suitable for the purpose which would be intended, and hopefully, with a bit of luck, never actually needed. But I do have some concerns that actually that's not necessarily going to be big enough, or will be cramped, shall we say, for any emergency vehicle which may need to use that. If there's a parking bay that's being used immediately next to it at the time, I personally would have preferred seeing DS1, I presume, on there, also allocated for emergency vehicles. The actual design itself, and Chairman may go, remember this back in the day, reminds me of those who are Star Wars geeks, looks like a TIE fighter, but that's nothing to be shameful about. But also, my last one is, and this is a planning, I don't think a planning consideration, however, could it be clarified in terms of the purpose, or just not, it's a care home, but I understand this is a private care home. Is there a function for NHS people? Because otherwise it's going to get incredibly expensive for something which we are sadly lacking in the area, and could cause problems for people who wanting to use it. And I do. It's a nice buzzword in terms of the when I say local employment. Yes, to a degree, but also the people who would be employed there are very specialist and professional in terms of what they do, which may not necessarily mean they actually are from local, but may actually need to come in from elsewhere because of the nature of the work. In fact, that nurses, doctors, and healthcare professionals could be the case. But generally, in practice, I like it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Thompson? All right.
Just to go back to design again, it's not very well thought out. It's solar gain, it's solar cooling, none of that's taken into account because of the pitches and the angles. PVs will be pretty poor. It orientates itself in completely the wrong direction for that. Just not enough thought for me. They could put a lot more thought into it, and it could be a really interesting modern design rather than, again, a pastiche of something. I don't know, just disappointed, really. That's just my view.
I think people on Sheppey who've got a recent residential home might be looking at this with a bit of envy, actually. But anyway, Councillor Harrison.
Well, yes, if you'd like to move it lock, stock and barrel over to Sheerness or the Isle of Sheppey, we would not have a problem. 2 points, Chair. And by the way, Ben had his hand up before me. It says a 67-bed care home, not a nursing home, which would be NHS. So it's a 67-bed care home, and I was... when was the original done? Because I can't say I probably wasn't here then, because I might well have been. I'm surprised that there were no none of these 67 were social rented as part of a 106 agreement. I thought that could have come up quite nicely. Is it, unfortunately, the applicant can't answer questions, so I'm reliant on the officers. When it says a care home, the way that the description was given by the applicant, it sounded very similar to me to the, I've lost the word now, but Regis Gate is one of them. Extra care housing, there we go, extra care housing. Sounded very similar to that, which is why I thought that there should be some for social rent. That's just a hint if you want to be extra helpful and kind. But the one thing that really did strike me when you first started putting the pictures up, being as I'm from Sheerness, is that we would not be allowed to have anything on the ground floor because it's a black mark from the EA. So I'm presuming that you don't have flooding down in Love Lane, Faversham, because, you know, the most vulnerable in our society would be sleeping on that ground floor. So that is a question. Thanks, Chair.
Did you get that, Ben?
Yes, I did, Chair. So the question was about flooding. No, this site is not prone to flooding, so it is fine to have accommodation on the ground floor.
Okay.
There was a question, what is this, from the description that was given by the developer in his 3-minute speech, is he describing what I call extra care housing? And was there never any suggestion that some of those places would be for social rent as part of a 106? Thank you.
So is this extra care housing, and would any of it be available for social rent under a 106?
So there is nothing secured on a social aspect for this in the Section 106. That matter is, I guess you could say the boat has already sailed on that, because we're now at the reserve matters stage. And as I set out earlier in the presentation, the reserve matters that we are concerned about in this application are access, layout, scale, appearance, and landscaping. The matter about securing places for social housing in this development is not for consideration in this application for reserved matters.
Mr. Chairman, I was well aware of that, but perhaps that's a hint that in the future that you have we have a working party on the planning committee to look at such things as 106s, so that you can think ahead as to the sort of things that might be useful to residents in the future. And in this case, social rent in a 67-bed care home would have been incredibly useful as part of a 106. Thank you.
Yeah, something to bring up in the PTPWG. Kerry.
Yes, thank you. So what we have here is permission for a care home as a C2 use, which isn't a C3 use, which is your typical dwelling house, which we would be seeking an affordable housing contribution for. So at the moment we don't have a policy position that requires affordable housing to be provided for a C2 residential care home, hence why it's not being secured. But that would be something for the local plan review and evidence base to take forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. I note that the reason this application is before us is because Faversham Town Council have objected to it, and I note that they're not here to explain why they've objected to it. Reading the report at 4.5, one of their main grounds is because the site plan doesn't include any provision for the parking of mobility aids, scooters, large wheel chairs, etc. That rather ignores the point that the people with the reduced mobility actually live in the home. The visitors tend to be the sons and daughters and relatives. I've been a regular visitor to care homes over the years, and I've never seen any large wheelchairs and mobility scooters sitting outside needing a space. So I don't think it's as a bigger point as it sounds at first glance. We do have an ageing population. There's a real shortage of spaces in care homes locally. Yes, it's a private care home, but my understanding is that most, if not all, care homes will take residents who are funded by the state. If the residents can't fund themselves, they don't care where the money comes from. So it would be available to all. And basically we need more care homes locally. So unless there's an overwhelming grounds to reject this, and I can't see one, I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just mention about, you've pointed out Faversham Town Council aren't here, but under the new reporting report system, at least we have a clear outline on under 4.3 of what their concerns were, and a clear reference to the officer's report, the paragraphs where they respond to it, and I think that does make it a lot better. When in the past we just had things like parish council objects on landscape, no substance to it. So I think these are improved reports, which I thank officers for. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to defend the Town Council on this one because I don't know what their provisions were, but I can make a pretty educated guess that it would be to do with their Health and Social Care Working Group, which is actually led by experts in the sector to try and develop policies around health and social care going forward, and to give advice. And my understanding from some of the visits I've paid to that group, we are seeing an increase in people who go into care whose partners do not go to the same care facility. Therefore, you have people who travel from their extra care social housing across the road, for example, to visit their loved one who requires more intensive care in the care home. So that may be why they were looking for additional parking facilities for mobility aids, for example. That being said, it's not really going to be a huge planning consideration at the minute because we haven't got the evidence base for that. I'm quite content with the design that's there. It's in keeping with what we're getting on that development as a whole. Not that I'm overly keen on the development as a whole. In terms of flooding, that's generally the high point. So if anything's going to flood in that area, it's going to go down to the south into the railway cut in. So you'd lose trains between Dover and Faversham before you'd lose any sort of issue in that area. Yes, it would be great to have BREEAM excellent and to have a slightly different positioning of it, but realistically the frontage is always going to be onto the main road, and you're always going to try and keep the main entranceway for these sorts of facilities away from the main road. So this is pretty much what you're going to get. There are much worse designs out there that have been approved previously, so more than content to support the officers on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Blom.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to comment on you saying that the report was a lot clearer. I do agree, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that the reason for referral to committee mentions the written representation, and then the graph of their rejections aren't under written representations on 5, they're under 4.3.
Okay, thank you for that observation. Right, those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Okay, that's unanimous. We'll move on to item 2.4, 24/500/508/full. We'll point out we've only got 35 minutes until 10 o'clock. So, Camwa Ash, Bull Lane Boughton, can we have the officer's update, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'm going to present this one in a second.
Well, he's certainly got an intro.
Yeah. Right. Coming round again. Is that on? Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There's no update to the report, so the recommendation is as is. This is an application for the conversion of a garage to a utility room and the erection of a side extension to be used as a store. So it's a householder application. In terms of the site itself, so it's the site. I'll zoom in on that. Site here outlined in red, so an end of terrace 2-storey property, and it's curtilage, and it's on the junction of Ball Lane and the street in Boughton, so it's in the built-up area boundary, and it's also in the Boughton Street conservation area. For noting, and as referenced in the report, numbers 209, 211 and 258, which are these ones here to the southwest, these properties on the other side of the street, and then on the other side of Ball Lane to the west, that they are all Grade 2 listed buildings. So in terms of the block plan on the right hand side, that's just obviously a close inversion of what you see on the left. So with the end of terrace property, there's one parking space as existing on an existing driveway, and then say an amenity area which wraps around the property, and there's a very well established hedge which runs round much of the perimeter, which you'll see on the photograph shortly. So this is the floor plan of the existing property with the existing garage here, which is proposed to be converted, and the side extension will be going here, which I'll show you shortly on the proposed drawings. This is the existing elevations. So front elevation, again you can start to see the hedge there, which has been shown in sketch form, and then the side elevation, which is where the side extension will be located. So in terms of those proposals, as I said, the footprint of the garage remains, the existing garage remains the same, and is converted to a utility room, and there's a single-storey side extension on the side of the property, obviously. And again, the elevations here, so the existing garage, effectively the front elevation's replaced with brickwork to match the existing dwelling, and a window which matches in terms of design and size, and then the side extension shown on that drawing and then shown from the side, but it would actually be obscured by the hedge in reality. So, photographs of the site. This is the left-hand side. This is the dwelling. As you can see, an end of terrace, and the right-hand side picture shows the terrace which steps up as you head along Ball Lane. Sorry, going back to that, you can just about see the one of the Grade 2 listed buildings there on the opposite side of the street with the sort of yellowish facade. There's one of the other ones on the left-hand drawing with the white facade, and you see the application sites there on the left, and you can see the hedge. Picture on the right is looking up Ball Lane, with the application site on the right-hand side, and there's a clearer picture of the hedge on the left, which wraps around the property. And on the right is the location of where the side extension will be located. As per the report, the recommendation is for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask Parish Councillor Sarah Mokes to speak, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Council promised us transparently issued planning decisions, and I'm sure you'll agree the need for transparency cuts both ways. The application that first came before us was for a garage. To quote the design and access statement, the existing garage, currently accessed from the driveway, is inadequate for use. Therefore, a new garage is proposed. Not convinced that it would be feasible to access the new garage via the existing entrance, we objected. The drop curb is already 10 metres from the junction, and so they'd have to take out a chunk of the hedge and drive over the pavement. We fear this is their intention. The applicants then backtracked and insisted that what they described as a garage was in fact a store. The officer actually admits that the extension could be used as a garage. However, she says, even in a scenario where the store was to be used as a parking space, what appears to be a difficult manoeuvre would take place entirely inside the applicant's curtilage, therefore having no impact on the highway. This all seems a bit dubious. As you know, parking places in Boughton are rare as hen's teeth. The loss of the existing garage risks causing overspill parking on the street. Policy H10 of the neighbourhood plan specifically prohibits the conversion of existing garage space to living accommodation. However, the officer has simply waved this aside on the grounds that the existing garage is small and should be discounted. Of course, there's nothing to stop the owners from buying a smaller car. There's also the amenity of future residents to consider. Camwell Ash has a tiny rear garden, around 5 metres long. Without the side garden, it's going to have very little outdoor amenity space, hardly appropriate for a 4-bedroom family home. Loss of the front garden, the only one left in this row, to unsightly back block paving is also unwelcome. However, our main objection centres on the building's appearance and impact on the conservation area. When the terrace was originally built, it was set back from the street for a reason, to prevent it encroaching on the historic setting. The Conservation Officer's rationale for unusually preferring a flat-roofed extension is largely due to the fact that it will be better concealed by the existing hedge. But surely the proposal has to be judged on its own merits, not the extent to which it can be hidden from view. Whatever assurance the applicant might give, a garden hedge has no statutory protection. Its survival isn't guaranteed. In any case, it's partly deciduous, so won't screen the garage store to the extent that's claimed. So what members have to consider is the effect this prominent flat-roofed extension would have on the street scene if the hedge were not there. Would it preserve and enhance the conservation area and the adjacent listed buildings? This is the key policy test.
Thank
It's our
you.
firm belief that it most definitely would not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Owen. Okay, I'm going to propose a site visit. I think it's really hard to understand the context of this without looking at it. So, do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Winkles?
I'll second.
Thank you. Does anyone want to speak about a site visit? Okay. Well, those in favour of a site visit, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3. My casting vote is we'll have a site visit. Thank you. Next we have 2.6 23 504 808/full 20 Lee Road. Can we have the officer update on that?
Thank you. Good evening. This application is 20 Lee Road, Sittingbourne. There is one update. Subsequent to the report being produced, there were 3 representations provided which related to a nearby site where it is asserted that a dwelling is being used as a rehabilitation centre and that disturbances have occurred at that property, and there's also been questions as to the applicant's experience in terms of running the proposed facility. Right, the application is for change of use from a residential property to a C2 residential accommodation use. The site is, bear with me, yep, site is outlined in red. It's an end of terrace property. It's an end of terrace property with a garage located in the garage block to the rear. This is an aerial view of the property with the yellow line indicating the property with the garage blocks set behind. This is the rear elevation of the property with the side entrance, access to the garage at the rear. This is the central middle garage with the parking in front and the garage block. This is the front elevation of the property. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, is Veronica Araco online? Well, we've got more problems on muting. Veronica Araco, are you there, please?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I've sent a statement in. I don't know if you would like to read that instead.
That's only if we have technical issues.
Okay. Are you there?
Yes, yes, we're ready and waiting.
All right. Thank you. First of all, I understand that when people hear the word substance misuse, the first thinking will be, antisocial behavior, but that's not the case. This is going to be a regulated service. We're being regulated by the CQC. First of all, they'll come in and make sure we are fit for purpose before we start. And every client that is being referred to us, we will do an holistic assessment that includes their psychological needs, their emotional needs, their medical history, if they've got any issue of violence before, and then we take all of this into consideration, making sure that we can meet their needs before we say yes. So this is a very safe service. The people we're going to be dealing with are not, these are responsible people. Most of them are working. Most of them have got families. Most of them have got children. And it's just that they are suffering, or their manager, what's the word I'm looking for? They are dealing with an issue, which is alcohol. So we're there to help them. They're coming sober. We're there to help them with detox. They are not coming drunk. They are not coming with any alcohol. They are not coming with any drugs. We don't deal with drugs at all. If there's any history of drug use, we don't take those people. We are only there to help with detox, alcohol detox. Before they come in, we assess them. We make sure we are able to meet their needs before they come in. And as soon as they come in, we search to ensure that they're not with any alcohol. They haven't come with any drugs at all. They are made aware that this is the rules before they come in, doing assessment. So it's a very, very safe service. I've worked with these service users for almost a year, and it's a very safe service. There's no issue whatsoever. You wouldn't even know they're there. You won't know they're there at all. During the first 3 days, they might be suffering from alcohol withdrawal and symptoms, which we manage. And at that point, they don't go out at all. You know, we're there to support them with medication and every other thing that they need. And if they were to go out, we always have a member of staff that is with them. We have an agreed program which we all go through together. So they're not, you wouldn't even know they're there at all. They are there to get
20
better.
seconds.
They are there to get better, not to cause any trouble. I assure you this is going to be a safe service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Mr. Mobolaji Falana?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mobolaji, and I'm a resident on Lee Road. I'm part of the Greece East Hall community. I'm here to oppose this application, and I say that in my capacity as someone who has actually worked over 16 years supporting people in the community. I mean, the application is solely focused on what happened in the property without considering the external factor to the residents that live in and around Lee Road. I mean, for example, you know, this is a situation whereby, you know, we have people who are recovering, and that's not the issue. The issue is about Great East Hall is a community whereby it's predominantly people with young children, people with young family. I mean, this is something that the council probably have a data on anyway, because we have a lot of school children, a lot of young adults within that community. Even foster carers, we have quite a few of them around, in and around the community. I think one of the most important thing here for us to consider is this is somewhere that's so secluded. It's far away from many other social amenities. There is no bus service on site. The closest convenience store is about 2.2 miles away. The closest GP is about 2.6 miles away. The closest train station is about 3 miles away. The A&E is about 3 miles away. There's no major accident emergency because we know Memorial closes in the evening. So there's so many factors to consider externally that, you know, has been ignored here. And I think the most important thing for us to consider here also is procedures are in place, rules are in place. They don't prevent incidents from happening. It's to deal with issues after they've happened. Just a couple of days ago on Monday, we have somewhere so close to this said property, which is literally like 2 doors away. And this is a property that's used to support young adults, teenagers in their later teens, to move to live independently. There was a major incident yesterday that spilled into the estate that the police and ambulance, you know, had to attend. And this is an external factor that happened. And this can be beyond the control of any measure that's being put in place. But one thing that's so so prominent into this application is we're asking the peace and the tranquility and the safe living of Leroy's residents and Great Eastall residents based on an application that's actually falsely presented to the planning committee. The said applicant says he lives at the property. They don't live at the property. That property is actually used as an Airbnb. As I speak now, there are guests from Airbnb in that property as I speak. The reality is we can't put profit ahead of people's peace. You know, yes, we need to house these people, but Great Eastall, Lee Road is not the place to do this. This is a place of family. This is a place that has no social amenities to support these people as they need.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll move the officer's recommendation. Seconded, Councillor Braun. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, it's one of those jobbies here. On one hand, people's mental health, well-being needs to be addressed. We need to provide their service. We need to provide places for that to be served. And we can't really, shouldn't be really picking and choosing as such, because there is a very, very wide need for that and a lot more services into that sort of field. But this actual location, if the officer could put back up either the location of the map or the picture of the front. My concern is the access to it. I did not see on the picture with the, I think the front entrance, doesn't appear to be no path. So if you're dealing with people who may have mental health issues, alcohol issues, potentially, is that, from a health and safety perspective, a good thing to have? I'm not so sure. Coming out of a front door straight into potentially a road. The applicant, I think it was, said about it's a place almost like for treatment to help people get better, and I welcome that. But they also said that it was for families, and they could be married, and they may have children of their own. So this is a temporary thing for them to come and recover. This brings me on to my second point, is in that case, if they have families who come to visit, where are they going to park? Great Eastall is notorious already, like so many other places, for parking. Where are they going to park? That's actually, again, safe and without clogging up the roads even more. And on those grounds, I'm not convinced at this point, and I say I'll listen to the debates of which one I'm going to actually fall on this. But for me, there are very real concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Winklis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I, to a point, echo the concerns of the last speaker. I can't really see it's basically a good location as such for people that have got mental health issues. Unfortunately, it does tend to cause a certain amount of antisocial behaviour, possibly. But I get on the next point is coming on to conditions again. Is it 5.1? If we was minded to pass this, I see the Kent Police basically have recommended that there should be CCTV installed basically around the premises. So if this is passed tonight, I would ask that the Kent Police suggestions is taken on board with the, as you say, the sort of people that maybe sort of live in there. Thank you.
Did you want to condition that?
I would like the condition put on, please. Thank you.
Can we have can we have a comment from the officer about that condition?
That could be conditioned.
Okay, those in favour of that condition being added? Well, that's agreed. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I just want to be clear on the parking situation, because in the report it mentions about our parking SPD, but doesn't go on to, from what I can see anywhere, really be clear on what that actually is and what is required at this property. A concern that I have got is that it says in here that there will be 3 clients at the property that won't have vehicles, so that's fine. But it then says that there will be 2 members of staff during the day, 1 staff member will stay overnight. There's no mention there whether that's done on a shift pattern. If that is the case, you could have 3 people working there that have cars at any one time. And I know that is an issue that has been raised in the past at other applications like this. If there's going to be 2 people working there in the day, they've got their cars parked, someone then comes along to park to do the next shift for the night, and there's a swap over, where does that person then park? And there's no mention in this about other people that would be coming to the property, whether there be medical reasons for you coming in. If there is people with alcohol abuse, they would probably have other support that's coming in to be caring and doing things. There's no mention of that at all, so I am concerned. I'd like to know exactly how many spaces are there for this property, and how all of those vehicles that would be visiting could be accommodated, because I can't see that it is at the moment, and it will have an impact on the highway.
Are you able to clarify on that?
Yes, I am. There is 1 garage and the parking space in front of the garage.
So just sure on that is 1 parking space, because the garage won't be used by staff that are coming and going, and there's 1 parking space for 3 staff members plus lots of other people, and I don't think that's enough. I don't think that does go with our standards at all if we're looking at what is effectively a commercial property.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Now,
Actually, I'm going to stop you. We're not going to get this through before 10 o'clock, so I'm going to ask for to suspend standing orders.
only until,
10:30.
and then that's it.
Are you okay with suspending standing orders?
Okay. Yeah, go on.
Yep. Okay. Carry on, Councillor Harrison.
10:30 or else. I know what I was going to say. Now, people talk about, not much parking space. Well, let me tell you, in Sheerness, and we are the worst, absolute worst in the borough. Now, we cannot tell residents in a 3-bed house, terraced house, that the 3 or 4 adults in that property can't have 3 or 4 cars because we ain't space for them. They want 3 or 4 cars, they have 3 or 4 cars. This is the 3-bed property. There can be 3 adults there having 3 cars. The fact there's only 2 parking spaces, 1 garage, 1 parking space, attached to the property is neither here nor there. And we have had this issue so many times over the years. We cannot, unless and until we are prepared to bite the bullet and have off-site parking, and when I say off-site parking, I mean a good 10-15 minute walk, then we cannot say to people, or we cannot put conditions on properties which say, and you can only have at any one time people who own up to 2 cars, or up to 1.5 cars, wouldn't it? So I think in terms of this application, that has got to be irrelevant. Now, this application is up for recommendation. I tend to the view that this sort of facility is more acceptable when it is small scale, discreet, because I've had it in the past. Oh, we're going to have a home for 15, 20 adults with learning disabilities. You should hear the uproar. Whereas a small 2 or 3, it's more discreet, and it has always been more acceptable in the past. And I would have thought that this sort of thing, detox, lockdown, you're not going to have people in and out every 5 minutes. You are going to be locked down, because that's the purpose of it. So I do not have a problem with this application, Chair, and as I say, I think that the the amount of parking applicable to the building is irrelevant, because if it was a family dwelling, there could be 4, 5, 6 adults there, and they can have 6 cars, and there's nothing we can do about it. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I note the reason this has been referred to committee is that it was called in by Councillor Hall, who I note is not here to explain his reasons. Certainly, if I called in an application and wasn't able to attend a meeting for any reason, I would send in a written representation, but as far as I can see, that hasn't been done. So I'm just looking at the objections that have been voiced against this application. I'm not going to go through all of them, but devaluation of property and increase in house and car insurance costs, well, that's not a planning consideration. Adverse impact from noise and smells, what's that based on? That criminal activities have already occurred at the site when it was used as an Airbnb, what's that got to do with it? It's not really used as an Airbnb now. The site will be unmanned and unregulated, well, that's obviously nonsense. Increase in traffic from the proposal, well, how's that any different to a conventional dwelling? Infrequent public transport, no facilities such as shops in the vicinity, again, that's no different to a conventional dwelling. The proposal would give rise to security safety risks for existing neighbouring residents. Well, that's not necessarily going to be the case. You could get a troublesome family moving in. It seems to me that the objections are based on prejudicial views, which is not a reason to reject it. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Marshington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think in view of the differences in the statements by the speakers, I don't think we're qualified to comment on what is good or bad care of mental health, and need qualified advice on both the medical and legal situations prior to a decision. Because arguing about parking spaces to do with an operation which is to do with mental health, I think we need some serious advice from which way we've got to go. And I would actually go for a defer, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marshington. Kerry is going to offer some advice.
Thank you. So in terms of what we're actually considering this evening, it's the change of use from a dwelling to a C2 residential care home. So that's the primary consideration of the application. It's an existing residential use in a residential area. In terms of the management of the facility, this will fall to separate legislation to govern, so it's not a planning consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, my only concern is the parking. I hear what Councillor Speed said, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, but the parking is an issue. And if that was, if it's a residential property going to a different use, and I think parking should be a consideration. Okay, they say 3 people are there, don't know if they drive there, don't know if they're allowed to drive, whatever. But they've got families visiting, and we quite often, if you're going to have a property converted or something, we look at the parking standards. My question would be, is that compliant with our parking standards as adopted? Because if it isn't, then I think we should refuse it. And if it's only got 2 parking spaces, it must have 4 bedrooms. So if you look at a 4-bedroom property, we recommend in a rural area it should have three parking spaces. But then you're going to have visitors. So you've got 3 residents there. You could have 3 visitors turn up at the same time. So is it creating a problem? So what I'd like to know is it compliant with our parking standards? Thank you.
Is it compliant with our parking standards?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I can help with that. So I've got the council's car parking standards for C2 uses, and the standard is 1 space per resident staff and 1 space per 2 other staff. And for visitors, 1 space per 6 beds or residents. So I would suggest that analysing that, the requirement would be for 3 parking spaces. If the property is a 4-bed property, as a dwelling, that would require 3 spaces as well. Thank you.
For clarity, how many spaces has it got? one and a garage.
Yeah.
Councillor Martin.
So I think the first thing that we have to consider is what the additional harm is, because that's the first thing that we're looking at. What is the difference in the level of harm? Now, in terms of how these operate, you don't have visitors in that 7 days that you're in there. You do not have visitors because you are detoxing, and a visitor can bring alcohol in, and that's the last thing you want in those sort of facilities. There are a number of these facilities already located around the borough. Many of them you've probably driven past on the way in today if you've driven, and you wouldn't know they're there. That's the point. It is about having residential care in a semi-normal setting to help somebody get over those withdrawal symptoms when they're at the biggest risk of relapsing. At that point, when they have got through that first risk, they're on to the next stage and they're back with their families. I'm trying desperately not to reveal the location of some of these existing ones, but it is very much a case of being further away from the shop is a bonus. Being further away from the GP, being further away from the train station is a bonus. Now, the difficulty that you're going to have is going to be that parking, but is the parking made worse than it already is? We're not changing the layout, we're not changing the parking facilities. So realistically, what we've got is, are we going to allow a residential use or a residential use? It's just whether that residential use has care people there or whether it's a family there.
Okay, no more speakers. So those in favour of the officer's proposal, please indicate. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And those against? 4. Any abstentions? Okay, well that's passed then. Next one we've got is item 2.5, which is... Yeah, but I'm doing 2.5. Good. Which is citing for one additional mobile home, reference number 18504-650 full.
My apologies for that delay. Okay, this application is for the siting of one additional mobile home onto an existing gypsy site which currently has permission for 2 pitches. Here we have the site, which is L-shaped. You have Bell Farm Lane to the north, running east to west, which is a public right of way. The existing pitches are 1 and 2, with the proposal being number 3. Here is an aerial photograph which was taken in 2021. The existing pitches are at the back, and the proposal which is on site is halfway from the road running east to west. There are other mobile homes to the north, but that is outside of this site, and therefore that is not part of consideration. This is a photograph of the current mobile home that's on the site, and this is a photograph showing the access along the access route with the mobile home under consideration on the left-hand side, and then the remainder of the Gypsy site to the rear. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Anyone wish to speak on this? Okay, those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. That's unanimous. Right, we've got item 2.1, which is... Didn't think we was going to get onto this one, actually. 501073/full land rear of the old squash courts, Tenham. Do we officer recommendation on this one?
Okay, good evening, Chair, good evening, members. This is an application for a minor material amendment to approve plans listed in Condition 2 to allow change of parking area from block paving to tarmac with drainage to on-site soakaways, alterations to parking space positions and landscaping areas, and relocation of bin store. And Condition 13, hard and soft landscaping pursuant to the original application for a block of 6 flats. This is the location in North East Tenham in Barra Green. The Dover to London railway line bounding the site to the north, open countryside to the east, and the built-up area boundary of Tenham bisects the site just to the rear of Selby House, which is the block of flats subject to this application. There are flats to the south and houses to the west, and a main parking area to the front of Selby House. This is the site layout approved in October 2020, the original application for a block of 6 flats with associated parking, cycle or refuse storage. You can see generous planting to the north, a new acoustic fence, and there's a fence that runs along the Tenham built-up area boundary to the rear with no gate restricting access, amenity area provided to the south of the block, and cycle parking as well. The block of flats has been built out in accordance with the approved plans. Since then, this Section 73 application seeks to amend the original application to regularise planning breaches associated with the construction of the car parking and landscaping of the scheme. These include the acoustic fence not being provided, the parking area not permeable block paving but tarmac, bin store not in accordance with the plan, hedging area behind bin store not provided, cycle store not provided, the grassed area to the south of Selby House not provided, electrical vehicle charging points not provided, and no path provided around the building, and the fence at the rear of the building not in accordance with the approved plan, with located here and here. It also incorporated an aspiration for a pedestrian link to the site to the east, which was subject to another application for housing, which was refused in June.
All done? No.
Almost there. Don't want to. Oh, that's better. That's better. Okay. This is a site photo. The green, the rear elevation, and the rear green space, which is so informally used as amenity space at the moment. this is the area to the south, Selby House, no cycle parking provided, and the area to the south of the building's tarmacked and parked, and cars are parked there. And this is the proposed layout of the Section 73. It would regularise the parking, which is remains in accordance with swale parking standards. It would be tarmac surface with drainage from on-site soakaways. It would be subject to a condition for surface water management schedule to be submitted. It would provide 6 electrical vehicle charging points, provide expanded communal amenity space for residents of Selby House to the rear and the side, which would vary from the original application, which had the fencing along the tenant built-up area boundary. Landscaped appropriately, and there'd be a condition imposed on the application for this. It's considered that this would form a suitable transition to the countryside. Provide a path, provide the pedestrian link along the south of Selby House. Bollards would be provided here to keep cars away from parking on the south side of the building where the cycle store and the bin store is, and the planting, acoustic fence and cycle parking that was secured in the original planning permission is reinstated in the plans. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions.
Thank you. Can you just clarify? They've got permission. They've gone ahead and done what they wanted, totally not in accordance with the permission, and we're now being asked to retrospectively say, yeah, it's okay.
I think that there's benefits to what they've proposed, and it's slightly different to what they've built out. In terms of the residential amenity area, I think in the original application it was really quite small for 6 flats. So I think a real benefit of this scheme is to give an appropriate amount of open amenity space for the residents.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Vaughan. Anyone want to speak on this? Councillor Speed, as you called it in.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we're back to Tenham again, but I'll try and make this one a little bit quicker than the last one. I originally called this in back in August of last year because, as we've heard, this development was not built in accordance with the approved plans and a number of the conditions were not implemented. The developer then submitted a Section 73 application to basically have everything approved as built and for the conditions to be removed. This had gone through 3 planning officers by this stage, so there was no consistency in approach, and at one point it seemed the officer was minded to retroactively approve the development despite conditions being ignored, and obviously I wasn't happy with that approach. However, I'm pleased to say that officer number 4 has done a very good job of finally moving things forward and has resolved most of my concerns, or at least to an acceptable degree. Having spoken to residents, there are now just 2 matters that I would like to see amended. Firstly, the loss of the hedge behind the bin store. This was provided in the approved application, but now it isn't there. The landscaping schedule back in June 2020 describes this as a double staggered hedge with an equal mix of hornbeam, beech and privet. It would therefore grow quite tall and provide significant screening. There are residents whose rear windows and gardens look out directly onto the bin store and the flank wall of Selby House. So now that the amenity area to the south of Selby House has been removed, there is space to provide the hedge behind the bin store. The store would just need to be moved a bit. The officer's report at paragraph 6.4.3 says that the tree proposed by the bin store is considered acceptable as an alternative form of screening. This doesn't screen the residents from the bin store, nor does it provide relief from the oppressive outlook of the back flank wall of the building. It results in a far lower level of landscaping overall. Paragraph 6.6.2 says that any potential impacts to residential amenity would be minor and acceptable. Residents don't agree that removal of the hedge would have a minor impact. Basically, the juxtaposition of the new flank wall with the existing flank wall of the old squash courts building gives a very hemmed-in feeling, and the darkness of the wall finishes give a very oppressive feel. The originally approved hedge would at least partly screen this building and go some way to mitigate this. So I would like to see the requirement for the hedge added to the landscaping condition. And then secondly, the path running to the eastern boundary of the site. As the officer mentioned, this was originally intended to provide a walkway between this development and another one on land to the north of Lower Road. However, that application has been refused, and paragraph 6.5.10 of the report acknowledges this path no longer has any purpose, but no objection is raised because the officer considers it doesn't cause harm. Now, this path falls outside Tenham's built-up area boundary, so it's contrary to the local plan. Paragraph 6.8.2 notes that the proposed use of this part of the site outside the boundary as an amenity area for residents is considered acceptable on balance. This is a reasonable argument given there's no longer an amenity area on the main part of the site, but this doesn't apply to the path. It would need to be built to KCC standards to accommodate bicycles, prams, wheelchairs, etc., and would need to be hard and wide. In my view, there's real harm in this hard landscaping outside the built-up area, and it undermines the openness and greenness of the countryside. So I would like to see this path removed. Other than that, I'm pleased to see that the officer has inserted deadlines into the conditions, because this has been going on for 4 years and really needs to be sorted out urgently now. So in conclusion, I'm happy to vote in favour of the officer's recommendation, subject to the 2 amendments I've proposed. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you feel it's reasonable that we condition that the hedge be put back and the pathway removed?
I do, yeah. I think that an argument can be made for that.
Okay, can I have a I'm taking it that Councillor Speed's proposed that. Can I have Councillor Bowen, are we all in favour of that? Okay, so those conditions are added. Councillor Hunt? No? Okay, so with those amendments, does anyone else wish to speak? So in those amendments, those in favour of the officer's recommendation? That's unanimous, thank you. Do you want to look at the part 5s?
Well, we've got 11 minutes.
Okay, anybody want to comment on any of them in particular? Okay, that's it. Not closed. No, that was 2.1. Item. Oh no, that's been withdrawn, sorry. Sorry, I meant to tell you that at the beginning. Oh, I forgot. Sorry. 3.1 withdrawn. The app. Have we stopped recording? Well, stop.